Charlie Adelson is a very successful dentist from South Florida. He has a practice that takes him on the road, working long days at offices all around the Miami-Fort Lauderdale area. Charlie says he was such a workaholic, he didn't have time for a really serious relationship. In the fall of 2013, he met a woman named Catherine McBanoa, who became his girlfriend. But he says she was much more serious than he was. Catherine had 2 children with her longtime boyfriend, Sigfredo Garcia. At the time Catherine was with Charlie, she was still sleeping with Sigfredo. Charlie spoke openly with Catherine about the child custody problems his sister Wendi was having with her ex, and that the family wanted to pay him off with $1 million. That ex was Dan Markel. Dan Markel was shot by Sigfredo. Then Charlie started paying money to Catherine. Charlie says he was being extorted by Sigfredo, but the prosecution says Charlie hired Sigfredo to commit the murder. Today, Charlie took the stand to tell his story. And tonight, we are live from Tallahassee as we continue our investigation into the murder of Dan Markel.
I'm Benny Politan. Great to have you with us here in Closing Arguments. One of those days, one of those big days, the defendant taking the stand. But before we get into all of that, let's take a breath and not forget and always remember what this case is about and why Dan Markel was murdered. It's because he was a loving father. That's why he was murdered. Both sides agree on this. This is not a point that's being debated. It was because of that custody battle, and he wouldn't relinquish his rights as a father, for goodness sake. That's why he was murdered. There was a child custody battle. Both sides agree to that. This is a man who wanted to spend his time with his children. He wanted to raise his children. He wanted to be responsible for them financially, psychologically, and physically, be there in their lives. Definition of a father. That's why he's dead. That's why he was murdered. That's why this case is such an extreme tragedy, because those boys are growing up without the man who would have been throughout their lives the most important man in their lives, and was up until the point he was murdered. And hopefully at some point they will learn that, they will realize that. Because I have a guess that the Adelsons have not spoken a lot about Dan Markel to his children. His children. Now, today, we're going to spend a lot of time tonight talking about Charlie Adelson because he's got a story to tell. He's had a while to prepare for this moment, years as a matter of fact, and today he took the stand. And this is it. When a defendant takes the stand, the entire trial changes. Yes, the other evidence is considered, but overwhelmingly jurors will come to a conclusion if they believe or outright do not believe a defendant when they testify. That's the risk, right? That's the risk defense attorneys talk about all the time. But a trial is a search for the truth. So the best way to get to the truth is to hear from everyone. So I welcome defendants to testify because then jurors have more information. They can judge the credibility, they can see how it matches up with all the evidence, and they can make a truer determination when the defendant chooses to testify about what actually happened, what the truth is and was about the murder of Dan Markel. Now, he's alleging in this story that it was a shakedown by Sigfredo, and through Catherine McBanoa, they're the ones shaking him down for money. And it was an extortion plot, right? Sigfredo knew that he had money, knew that he had this problem. So through Catherine McBanoa was extorting this money, threatening that they would do to him the same thing that happened to their arch nemesis. Right? Let's not forget that, right? That the whole basis of this extortion is we're going to kill the one person that you want dead and then threaten to kill you and say, the way we killed your sister's nemesis, the enemy of the family, the person that the family could not stand, We'll take him out, but we'll take you out too. I don't know, kind of awkward of a plot. But that's what Charlie's story basically is and was today on the witness stand. So he testified, and we're going to take a listen to a lot of his testimony, but we're also going to take a look at his testimony, his body language. What was his body saying on the stand today? We'll have a lot of time to talk about the words, but what the body was saying is just another part of all of this. So, without any further ado, let's go straight down to Tallahassee, Florida. Court TV legal correspondent Julie Janae joining us live. What a day, Julia. What a day down in Tallahassee.
What a jam-packed day.
First, before we get to your three big takeaways, just describe the scene inside the courtroom, because it seemed a little different today.
Oh, it was packed. It was beyond packed today, especially at the beginning. Before lunch is when you didn't even have the standing room. People weren't standing. You had to sit inside of Judge Everett's courtroom, but there was no space. There were a lot of people that we hadn't seen before who were inside of the courtroom, more trial watchers, people who knew Dan Markel. I sat next to a woman who had been in a class with Wendi Adelson at one point. Everyone just very curious to hear from Charlie Adelson on the stand, and there was a lot of anticipation for cross. So I wonder if that's why we didn't see so many people after lunch, is when the defense notified the court before we broke for lunch that they were going to go all day on direct. And so many of the people who were there, who were supporters of justice for Dan Markel, weren't quite as interested in hearing another half day of the direct examination. So they may be coming back tomorrow, and we'll see a similar packed house because they want to see that cross-examination.
Like any witness, the true test is the cross-examination. I mean, that's when you get the questions that you can sort of prepare for, but not really prepare for. You just don't know what's going to happen. Direct, you can control, you can rehearse, you can have a game plan, you can move methodically from point A to point B, which is what I think they did today. I think it was well thought out the way they put it together. But if you believe the story, that's another thing. So let's start. You've got three big takeaways today. What's number one?
Number one is Katie extorted me. That's the buzzword that we kept hearing throughout Charlie Adelson's 8 hours on the stand today. He used the word extorted, extortion, just over and over again. You pretty much know the jury has got to have written that down once or twice. I saw a lot of note-taking in the very beginning of his testimony today, and they really wanted to take note of the play-by-play of his day on July 18th of 2014. Where did he go? Who did he talk to? And most importantly, what he says happened after he learned that his ex-brother-in-law, Dan Markel, was shot. He said that his ex-girlfriend approached him. This was after he had done a lot of talking. He admitted to the talking about wanting to get rid of the problem, that it was just bothering his family, that they wanted to offer $1 million to Dan Markel to allow Wendi Adelson to move to South Florida, and he turned it down. And he said he talked about it a lot. He made the joke about hiring a hitman to a lot of people, but it was completely a joke. But he said that Katie approached him about telling that joke to the wrong people.
We sat down on the couch, and she started to talk to me. And she said, listen, this is all my fault, but I had no idea anything was going to happen, but this is totally my fault. I spoke in too much detail about your family's personal problems, about your sister, Dan Markel, and the $1 million offer.
What did you say?
I'm like, what are you talking about? And she's like, my friend killed Dan, and he wants to be paid $1/3 of $1 million.
How did you react?
I was like, what did you just say? And she's like, my friend killed Dan, and he wants you to pay $1/3 of $1 million.
What happened next?
I stood up, and I started cursing it. And I'm like, what the are you kidding me? And she's like, no. I'm like, who did this? Who's your friend that did this? And she's like, I don't want to say. I can't say. And I said, who was it? And she just kept saying, I'm not going to tell you. And I was like, was it Sigfredo? And she's like, no, I'm not telling you. And I just walked in my bedroom and sat down on the edge of my bed.
What happened when you got in the bedroom?
She came into the bedroom, followed after me. She sat down next to me, She started telling me, like, I'm so sorry, this is all my fault, but I didn't know any of this was going to happen. And I'm like, Katie, I'm not going to be part of it. Like, I'm not going to be part of paying for a murder. This is insane.
Charlie Adelson said he was freaking out in that moment. He didn't share any remorse on his end, how he may have felt about saying that joke so much, it getting around the wrong people. But I did notice that these jurors were leaning into this part of the testimony. There was one man who was sitting really out of his chair, leaning where he had been sitting back. He was leaning forward. So they understand this is the crux of the defense theory in this case, Vinny.
And what did Katie McBanoa say about any of this? I mean, when she testified.
Oh, she didn't. Yeah, well, it depends on which time you are mentioning, because she's testified 3 times.
Most
and the first
recently.
2 times she said that she didn't do it at all. But in this trial, she said that he approached her not on the day of, but back Halloween, so about 9 months before the murder, that he approached her saying, do you know someone who can harm someone? And she said, yes, she had someone. It was consistent that she only said a friend, and Charlie Adelson said that on the stand today, that she only would tell him that a friend did it, and he didn't know who the friend was until 21 months later. So that was somewhat of a consistency, if you call it that. But she said nothing about an extortion or coming to him after the fact. She said this was something they all colluded on from the very beginning, throughout, up until the date of the murder.
So after the extortion takes place, how does he explain the ongoing relationship with her? And I mean, there are times, right, where they're a little flirty after the murder, after the alleged extortion.
Charlie Adelson has an answer for everything. This was a precise direct examination. So he said that not only did he not think she was part of the extortion, he thought that she was really being extorted too. He had to give her the money so she could give her friends the money, the friends that she wouldn't reveal to him who they were, and that she asked him, let's never talk about this again. He put it out of his mind, and he still cared about her. She had kids, so he would help her out, and he was paying her those regular payments because she needed health insurance for her kids, so that was part of it. But also he wanted to make sure she kept getting the money, because these were extorters who were okay with a payment plan. They couldn't get all the $350,000 from him up front, so he only had $138,000 in cash. So she said, well, can you do $3,000 a month? And he said, I can do that.
Okay. What do you have for your second takeaway? That's the defense right there. That is the defense.
That's the defense. We know it now in its entirety. We know it from Charlie Adelson. Number 2, though, is his demeanor and his emotions on the stand. I mean, that's what you're looking for from a defendant who chooses to speak out, who chooses, even though they don't have to, they have a right to remain silent, and the jury can't use it against them. But there were some moments of emotion, but for the most part, he had a very even tone. He didn't get really emotional or have any moments of anger on the stand at all. He did emphatically say that his sister had nothing to do with this, and that he didn't tell her anything, that the state has it wrong on a lot of things. We also learned that he has a son, so you saw a bit of emotion in his face when he was talking about his 5-year-old son, who would have been born well after all of the affidavits naming him as an unindicted co-conspirator, but before, obviously, his arrest. Here's a listen to his attorney drawing out some more of that emotion.
I saw you get a little emotional there. Do you love your nephews?
Of course.
Would you ever take their father away from them?
No, never. Never in a million years.
Judge, may we approach just briefly?
So during that break, most of the jurors just talked among themselves, but I noticed one male juror on the back row. He kept his eye on Charlie Adelson during that moment, just seeming to want to watch what he was going to do. For the most part, they were all attentive, but they seemed to be checked out by the end of the day. This was a pretty long day to have one witness going over more recordings inside of the courtroom.
Yeah, we've covered trials, though, where one witness was up there for a month, so... Well, one day is, to me, like that's what it should be. I mean, he has a huge story to tell, a lot of things to try to explain, and it's taking some time to get through all of it. Okay, so what do you have for your third takeaway from this huge day inside the courtroom?
A third takeaway is the obvious parts of this investigation. We've learned a lot about it from the prosecution side, and now we're getting to see it from Charlie Adelson's perspective. We know investigators in this case worked tirelessly to come to the conclusion that they did, that they went through hours and hours of wiretap recordings and scoured for those GPS and the SunPass data in order to find the suspects that led them to the Adelsons. But when it got to the undercover part, it seems that it wasn't so shrouded at all. In particular, Charlie Adelson today talked about the conversation he had with his father at a sushi restaurant, Matsuri, and we have the recording of them talking and the agent recording them through a bag. But today, Charlie revealed that they knew all along that that was an undercover agent.
I mean, the way the guy ordered his food, I mean, he clearly doesn't like sushi, and he's sitting in a sushi restaurant, and then he's sitting there with this bag on a table next to our dinner plate. He's either the rudest guy ever, or could be a police officer, or I could be just completely wrong, and he is just a rude guy.
Hello. Hola, diga. Hello, diga. Who is this? Who's this? Someone's been calling my family. I'm trying to figure out who this is. In reference to what, man?
Now, in hours and hours of The Wire, this is probably the quietest you've ever been. Why?
I was looking to get information from him. I wasn't looking to give him any information about me or anything. And he was pretty scary, too. I was talking to him on the phone.
Now, when he starts speaking and he says things like, in reference to, and do the right thing, what did that make you believe?
He sounded educated. He didn't sound like a Latin King gang member.
There at the end, you're hearing a call between the undercover agent who was part of the bump on Donna Adelson and Charlie. He's calling to get that information, see who it is, see who was harassing his mother. And it's through that call that he picks up on pretty quick. And Vinny, I know you've talked about it a lot on your show about the kind of vernacular that the undercover agent who's supposed to be posing as a blackmailer sounded like. Sounds like Charlie Adelson was able to pick up on it. And next thing you know, he's on calls with Catherine McBanois saying 100% pot-bellied pig. He's using this code to say, I know it's a cop, it's not someone who's actually blackmailing us.
You know what really stuck out to me as I'm watching and listening to this testimony today, and maybe I missed it, it was a long day. At any point in any of these wiretaps or anywhere, does he ever mention to anyone that he's being extorted? Like anyone, like when he's talking with his father, does he talk about being extorted?
Do you know when it happens? He said that it happened. His defense attorney asked him, during that bag video recording, you lean over to your father and you whisper something and you all chuckle. What did you say? And Charlie Adelson said, well, I said, they don't know that I've been extorted before this. So it was said, according to Charlie Adelson, during that conversation, just it didn't happen.
The one part of the conversation that's not picked up by the microphone, that's when he mentioned the extortion. Oh. That is so tragic for Charlie, because if only the microphone had picked that up, Julia Janae, he would have had, the best piece of evidence. The best piece of evidence, unfortunately, was whispered in his father's ear, and his father would not come into court and testify about it because he was going to take the Fifth Amendment. Isn't that tragic? Like, his father heard it and could have verified it for him, but he's taking the Fifth. Oh, such a tragedy for Charlie. Wow. Talk about bad luck, Julia Janae. All right. I'm sorry. I hate putting you on the spot, Julie Janae. I just had to get that out. I was holding it in all day, but now I got it out. So
It's a fair point.
What's happening
It's a fair
tomorrow?
point.
What's happening tomorrow?
Tomorrow, more Charlie Adelson on the stand. His direct isn't over. He's got about an hour more, is what attorney Daniel Roshbaum says is ahead. Then the cross-examination. Then there might be redirect. So we may be in Charlie Adelson testimony all of tomorrow. The judge also mentioned working on the charge conference. So we are getting close to verdict watch and closing arguments because there's not going to be any rebuttal.
All right. Julie Janae live in Tallahassee. Another big, big day. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Benny.
When we come back, we're going to bring in our guests and we're going to take a look at Charlie Adelson's body language. What was his body saying? Was it the same thing as his mouth? We'll find out. Plus, coming up next hour.
On the docket tonight in the Low Country of South Carolina, Alec Murdaugh says the court clerk tampered with the jury and now he wants Judge Newman off the case as he tries to get a new trial.
And I know you have to see Paul and Maggie during the night times when you're attempting to go to sleep. I'm sure they come and visit you.
A brilliant law professor gunned down.
In the midst of a bitter custody battle.
Now, the victim's former brother-in-law, a prominent South Florida dentist,
Accused of being the mastermind behind the murder.
Florida prosecutors are setting their sights on Charlie Adelson.
3 people have already been convicted for their role in the plot.
Now, will Charlie Adelson's own words come back to haunt him?
The Dentist Mastermind Murder Trial. Live coverage weekday mornings on Court TV.
Did you cause the death of Professor Dan Markel?
Absolutely no. You know, I was going to get you a hitman, but the TV set was a lot cheaper, so I went with the TV set instead. And I said it as a complete joke, and it was stupid. I spoke in too much detail about your family's personal problems, about your sister, Dan Markel, and the $1 million offer. My friend killed Dan, and he wants you to pay $1/3 million. Are you kidding me? I slept with a gun in my nightstand ever since then. And I started carrying my gun on me also.
big, big day inside the courtroom. Accused mastermind Charlie Adelson taking the stand in his own defense. Looks like he'll be the only witness the last witness for the defense in all of this. Let's bring in our guests. We need to take a look at this. Joining us in Orlando, Florida, jury consultant, human behavior expert Susan Constantine is with us. In McKinney, Texas, prosecutor, defense attorney, creator of the YouTube channel Jury Trial Mentor Carl Steinbeck is with us. And in Tallahassee, Florida, host of the podcast Surviving the Survivor, Joel Waldman. Great to see everyone tonight. Huge day. Let's start here with this first statement made by Charlie Adelson on the stand. Susan, I want you to watch it closely and tell me if you see anything that tells you something that maybe his mouth is not telling us. I don't know. Let's watch.
Did you cause the death of Professor Dan Markel?
Absolutely no.
Did you hire anyone to kill him?
No.
Did you put any letters in any diaper bags of Katie Magbanowa to have Professor Markel killed?
No.
All right, this is the denial off the top. Susan Constantine, did you see or hear anything that struck you in any of that?
Sure. For the first thing that he says is, he says, absolutely no. Well, you can cross off no, and there's your answer. So just as absolutely he did. So then you look at the other two questions, you'll see his head shake no. The very third one, I believe that one is true, but absolutely he knew about it. And the second question, the same thing, because he shook his head. No, he did not, which was instinct. Is also the third one. And looking at his overall facial demeanor, the third one I believe was true.
Okay, let's take a look now at Charlie Adelson telling his story. This is really the crux of the entire defense.
We sat down on the couch, and she started to talk to me. And she said, listen, this is all my fault. But I had no idea anything was going to happen, but this is totally my fault. I spoke in too much detail about your family's personal problems, about your sister, Dan Markel, and the $1 million offer.
What did you say?
I'm like, what are you talking about? And she's like, my friend killed Dan, and he wants to be paid $250,000. She said he'd come after you, he'd come after the family. Like, Charlie, you don't have a choice. Just pay the money. You said you had the cash. You said you were going to pay a third. Like, just do it. Like, I'm trying to help you out.
What did you do then?
I said, Katie, I don't have $250,000 in cash. And she's like, you said you did. And I was like, no, I cash is, and I can write a check for $250,000. I don't need to take out a loan. And she's like, well, you have a ton of money in your safe. And I said, go ahead and count. Because that's not $250,000.
And did she count it?
Yes, she did.
How much money did she count?
$138,000.
So it wasn't $100,000, it was $138,000.
Correct.
What did she do with $138,000?
She put it in she had a big purse. She put it in her purse. She asked me, she said, well, can you pay like $3,000 a month? And I said, yeah, I can do that.
All right, I'm going to get it from Susan first, and I want to hear you two guys, your take on this. Susan, what did you see or hear in that part? Because this really is the defense.
Right. So what you'll see consistently when he is testifying, he has what we call these inner brow razors and these outer brow razors. And that's causing this corner to pull in and these horizontal lines. When he is trying to move it into the deception area, these stressors start to show up. This is called pain and suffering. Now, this is not pain and suffering of where he is feeling sad or remorseful. This is the cognitive load that is building to try to pull off the lie seamlessly. Now, there is a moment where he does show true, genuine emotion, and you can see it in the bottom region of his mouth, his the chin dimpling. You can see the quivering. All of that was true. He also mentioned about the $3,000. The $3,000 is a number one lying number that most liars use. So it's usually in denominations of 3,000. So overall, there were pieces of it that were truthful, and there was a majority of it that was not.
Joel Waldman, we've been waiting a long time to hear this story. What are you thinking as you're hearing Charlie Adelson on the stand? Tell us about this extortion plot.
Well, Vinny, obviously what the jurors are thinking is most important. I was in the courtroom. I've been in the courtroom all week, and I can tell you today was the most difficult day for the jurors. I personally felt a little bit like I was waterboarded by the end of the day. It was torture listening to this. It was a bit convoluted. It dragged on. They were speaking really slowly. And a lot of people, particularly in our live chat, were complaining about just being able to follow the logic. But essentially, they say that there were two extortion plots. There was this bump. After the bump, Charlie says he didn't know who it was. He wanted to keep Katie close. Then they realized it was the police, but they didn't want to go to the police because they thought that maybe if they went to the police, they'd be in harm's way. It just seemed like they were trying to jam a square peg into a circle. And Daniel Rashbaum early on talked about puzzle pieces. Right now, they're just not fitting together.
Carl Steinbeck, you know the evidence in this case inside out. How does his story fit with the rest of the evidence in all of this?
Well, I don't think it fits good at all. I mean, the government has proven such a great case. They have all this digital evidence of the emails, the texts. They got the video camera at the Dolce Vita restaurant where they got him talking to Katie, talking about killing the undercover agent, and that's just over a $5,000 demand. So his story, though, he tried to go over it in detail. And mind you, this is like 10 years ago, up to 10 years ago, he's talking about, he was going over in such microscopic detail, it just didn't pass any credibility test. And I thought his demeanor was terrible. And so I think the whole defense is really losing the jury, and their whole theory is just so preposterous and outrageous that I think the jury just wants to get this thing over with so they can go home. And I think the government's already won it, and they're not going to call any rebuttal witnesses. So we got to listen to another hour of it tomorrow. But it was so painstaking today, and most the spectators in the audience there, they wound up leaving early.
Okay, let's get to Charlie Adelson now. This testimony refers to when he sees Katie to pay her $3,000 in these installment extortion payments. Let's take a look at this testimony.
She said, look, none of this money's going to her. She's giving all the money to her friend. She said, can you do me a favor? I need to get health insurance for my kids. Like, I'm helping you out. Nobody's going to ever pay you a visit. Can you give me $2,000 in cash for my friend and write me a check for $1,000 every month? And that way, she said she'll cash it, give the money to her friend, and then that way she can get health insurance for her kids.
Okay, so let's break that down a little bit. She says to you she needs health insurance for her kids. Mm-hmm. And she says to you, I'm getting none of the money at all.
Yeah, she said none of this is going to her.
But it would really help me if 1,000 of the $3,000 can be in the form of being on the books of your business, essentially.
Yes.
All right. I'm trying to figure this out, Joel. I'm trying to figure out how this works. So, $3,000 payment, but I need health insurance for my kids. And is she or is she not extorting him? Is she? Because he's trying to play it both ways, right? She's like sort of leading the extortion and being the funnel for the extortion, but she's not involved, and that's why he's still flirting with her.
Well, Vinny, you hit the nail on the head there, because the whole defense theory here is that she is the mastermind of this extortion plot, but he's got to pay her, and she's now his ex-girlfriend, Katie Magbanowa, and he's calling her. I mean, how does any of this make any sense? If someone is extorting you, you either go to the police. In this case, he says he couldn't because he was so fearful of, Sigfredo Garcia or Luis Rivera coming after him. But why would Katie mastermind this? She wasn't benefiting from it. It just doesn't make sense. And Georgia Kappelman is a very, very shrewd prosecutor. She's going to make that point known.
Yeah, a cross-examination will be huge tomorrow. All right, let's do this. We've got more testimony to go through here, folks. Our guests are going to stay with us. What a day down in Tallahassee. Charlie Adelson, the accused mastermind, denying it all and saying he's the victim.
There's a tragic outcome in this case.
Civil trial that is the focus of the Netflix documentary Take Care of Maya.
How a misdiagnosis tore their family apart.
They continue to accuse Jack and Beata of being child abusers.
Jack called me and said Beata just hung herself.
Is the hospital they're suing responsible for what happened?
The Take Care of Maya trial. Trial coverage weekday mornings at 8/7 Central on Court TV.
Did someone write a letter to you or something?
I've got some paperwork hand delivered to me.
You're being sued?
No, that's what I thought it was, but I'm going to talk to you.
Does it involve me or other people?
Well, probably both of them.
What's that?
Probably the two of them. So you probably have a general idea what I'm talking about.
Mother and son, but she's not speaking directly about what just happened. What they're talking about is the bump. Take a look at the video. This is the bump. This is what she called Charlie about after this little bump happened, right? She's on the street. This guy approaches her. It's an undercover. She doesn't know who he is. Hands her something. Now, at this point, she, I guess, already knows that she's being extorted, 17 months prior. Like, what? And why isn't she upfront about it? Why doesn't she just say what happened? Why is she being so cagey in all of this? Doesn't make sense to me. Well, Charlie Adelson on the stand today explaining his conversations with his mom after the bump.
Does it involve me or other people? Her answer, well, probably both of us, probably the two of us. So you probably have a general idea of what I'm talking about. By the end of figuring out what this was, what did you understand her to be saying here?
By the time I got down to the third call, I realized fully what she was talking about in this call, in that she's getting extorted.
And so why the two of us?
She knows I was extorted 2 years earlier, and it's the same people that are coming to extort her for money. So she's trying to say like it's the same thing that happened to you is happening to me.
Carl, like, what person, if you think you're getting extorted, you know you've been extorted, but it's just you and your son on the phone. Why? Like, there's no plausible reason why you couldn't say, I think we're being extorted again, Charlie.
Right. They never brought up the word extortion having to do with the first supposed extortion on any of the wiretaps they have or any of the video surveillance cameras they have. So it's just so preposterous. And the thing you also keep in mind is when this conversation supposedly happened with him and Katie, where she's demanding a third of $1 million, she never threatened him with a knife, a gun, or anything. And he just could have said, well, I don't want to. And, she had that kind of power over him. So all of a sudden, he's in control of all of his relationships. And all of a sudden, she has control. So it just doesn't make any sense at all.
Susan Constantine, human behavior expert. Like, if you're a victim of an extortion, would you be afraid to say that word out loud? Is there something to that? Like, what's going on here?
No, not at all. I mean, if he was a victim of extortion, he would use it. He would talk about it. So, but overall, I want to share with you, when I'm looking at his body language overall, and it's consistent in every single one of these questions where he's trying to deviate from the truth is, he has a cluster every single time, which is rapid eye blinking. He has the lip corner, which I call pursers, and then he has this lip licking, and then followed by usually a gulp or a swallow. These are clusters, and it always happens after he's asked a probative question. He tries to deviate from the truth, and when he does that, you see the stressors pull in, you see the rapid eye blinking, you see the pullers right here, every single time. So that's the way he lies. Not everyone lies the same, but this is a cluster that happens within 5 to 7 seconds after being asked a probative question, and he tries to deviate from the truth.
And this is direct examination. Tomorrow's the cross.
Yes.
All right, let's take a listen now. This is Sergeant Corbett talking about some text messages regarding this birthday party. The birthday party for Harvey, Charlie's dad, Donna's husband. Let's take a listen.
Was there a text message exchange in March of 2014 where Donna Adelson asked Charlie Adelson to erase a text that she sent?
Yes.
Okay, can you show us that? Can you read it to us?
Two texts here. The first says 37 miles to Gainesville. And the next is, I can't talk now, but I'll text you before we stop in Gainesville where I can go to the bathroom and have a moment of privacy. Then I'll call. Please pick up because I will have very limited, quote, alone time today. Erase this text after you read it.
Okay, so she wants to go to a bathroom to talk to Charlie Adelson on the phone in private once she gets in Gainesville here?
Yes.
But wants him to erase that text on his phone?
It's what it indicates, yes.
Okay. Then a few minutes later, what does she say?
We'll stop in about 5 minutes and I can speak to you privately about Dad's birthday gift when I'm out of the car. I have some good ideas.
All right, this is March of 2014. Now here's Charlie Adelson on the stand today explaining this birthday gift.
Do you recall what that is all about?
It was about my dad's birthday.
Who was your mom with at that stop at Gainesville?
She was with my dad, so she didn't want to talk in front of him.
And why didn't she want to talk in front of him?
Because it was a surprise. Originally, we were thinking about doing a cruise.
What was a surprise? That you were going to kill Professor Markel, or that you were going to have a surprise birthday party for your dad?
No, it was going to be his 70th birthday party.
And do you recall in that text message talking about a caterer?
Yes.
Now, you had discussed this caterer as far back as April and May with your mom, correct?
Yes.
Now, what did you get your dad for his birthday gift?
I paid for the catering for the party.
And what type of catering was it?
It was a chef came to the party and they cooked paella and seafood, and then we had a bunch of desserts also and salads.
Joel, how big is the demand down in South Florida for the paella chef? I mean, because it's like months and months and months of planning this paella chef.
Well, I'll tell you what, that's really going to play to these middle-class jurors that they're hiring a paella chef. But, you know, this whole theme, the Adelsons speak in code, and the more wiretaps you listen to, the more that becomes clear. And plenty of wiretaps have been played. But this idea of Harvey's birthday present, Georgia Kappelman, the lead prosecutor, brought that up with Wendi when she was on the stand, and her face turned bright red. She rattled her, and it has become very obvious that this birthday present, Georgia flat out asked, was it the murder of Dan Markel? Was that the present? And she said, that's a horrible thing to ask. In fairness to Charlie, because we're all beating up on him, a lot of our viewers said, you know, he was almost more likable than Wendi. He's been very measured today. He's known to be a hothead. He's a narcissist. He had Maestro written on his Ferrari license plate, but he has stayed very calm, cool, and collected. What's going to be interesting is when Georgia crosses him, does he lose that cool?
Yeah, that's, you know, make it or break it time for anyone who defendant testifies, is withstanding cross-examination. And at the end, does the jury like you? Do they like the prosecutor? How does it fall? Carl, getting back to the paella chef, if I'm having discussions about hiring a paella chef, I don't call it the birthday present. I say the chef that we're going to hire. I mean, is that so? Did you see or hear, come across any evidence where they actually like said paella chef?
No, it's really bizarre because they have so many different codes they're talking about over this whole 2-week period of the bump that the jury's really going to pick up on the fact that the only reason they're talking in code is because they're worried about the law enforcement wiretapping their conversations after the bump. And that's exactly what the case was. And so Charlie's trying to put a spin on it. And it's just really so hard to follow the bouncing ball. I think the jury's really getting tired of hearing a lot of this stuff, and a lot of them are sort of probably checking out as well.
Susan Constantine, your thoughts about the likability of Charlie Adelson? Because Joel's telling us, you know, he's got avid viewers that are watching this. What are your thoughts?
I think that, Joel, you're right on. So, you know, there's going to be people that are in that jury's going to believe him because he does seem very collected. He doesn't get overly emotional or overly agitated. He stays fairly neutral throughout. So that is, some people may see that's just his normal behavior. So I think that there's going to be jurors that will find him likable. And I know that that's not necessarily favorable to everyone that's watching Court TV right now. But when I'm watching him, there's moments where he does appear likable. And of course, he's being deceptive. There's all the indicators and all the bells and whistles are blowing.
I think the question jurors should ask themselves in determining whether they trust Charlie Adelson, you know, would you let him work on your teeth?